I have a friend of mine who always used to tell me, they're never going to be able to actually kill the labor movement because it's an idea, it's not an institution. And work sucks, and working people know it. That's why there'll always be a labor movement. It might look different. It might not be what your grandfather did. It might not be what our grandchildren will do. There will always be a labor movement.
You have to have solidarity even when you're like, what does this person really do for me, right? Because it's not about that.
And my job is to represent them. My personal political views don't matter in this scenario. One message I would pass along to any rep is this: don't tell anybody what they want to hear. Tell them what they need to hear.
When you're in a fight like this, especially with a corporation in this country, no one is going to come down from the mountain and save you.
Welcome back, Solidarity Report listeners. My name is Joshua Town. I'm a rank and file city letter carrier. I am a part of the NALC, Branch 55, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And today, my co-host is Mr. John Murphy down there in Florida. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Josh, for having me on again. This time, we're up in Rhode Island. Last episode was Florida. Now we're in Rhode Island, so thank you. I'm a city letter carrier down here in Florida. I'm out of Branch 4716. Thank you, Josh.
And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Patrick Crowley. He is the president of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. And welcome aboard, Mr. Crowley.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah. So first off, what union and local are you from? Like, where did you start your whole union process?
Well, it's a 30-year story. So I spent 5 years working as an organizer for Teamsters Local 25 out of Boston. I spent another 5 years working for the Hospital Workers Union on Cape Cod. And then I spent 20 years working for the National Education Association, Rhode Island, before I became president of the AFL-CIO here.
And what led you to run for that position?
For the state Fed president?
Yeah.
I just thought it was an opportunity to, take the passion that I have for the labor movement up to another level. Rhode Island's a great place to be a union activist and a union organizer. It's, we're 1 degree of separation from everyone else. We all know each other. We work together. And it's the type of place where, titles don't matter as much here as they do might in the other places. And as long as you can bring it as an organizer, as an activist, you're going to have a voice at the table. And, the folks that were my predecessors just opened the door for me. And I just thought it was my turn to, do the same for the next generation coming after me.
Now, is that correct? I believe there's a bridge that they're renaming after your predecessor. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The bridge right next to my union hall, which crosses over Route 95 in Providence, is going to be named the George Nee Bridge after my predecessor. He was there for 40 years. So I thought it was a fitting tribute.
Yeah. I mean, well, at the AFL-CIO, you're there to build bridges. And I think that's even more of a nod. That's what we do, is we build bridges. And for anyone that doesn't really know what the AFL-CIO is, what is the AFL-CIO?
So the letters stand for the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. It's an old-fashioned name. We're the umbrella organization for all of the unions in the state. And the AFL-CIO nationally is the umbrella organization for all of the unions in the country. So we're like the union of unions. So here in Rhode Island, we represent 80,000 working class people. We have 275 different local unions who are affiliated with my organization. And our job is to coordinate labor activities, both politically, economically, socially, in the community, in the organizing field, to make sure that people have each other's back.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, and that's the one thing that I did see. I did see that you were with Launa and you guys did a hot lunch or hot meals. What was that exactly?
Yeah, so about a couple of weeks ago, what we did was we had a day of action with the entire labor movement, but it was named in honor of Dominic Ruggiero, who's the former Senate president. He passed away last year, and he was a longtime member of the Laborers International Union of North America. So we got about 300, 400 rank and file members together, and we packed 50,000 ready to go meals for food pantries across Rhode Island with the United Way of Rhode Island.
See, that's awesome. And I know that same Saturday, that was the letter carriers stamp out hunger drive. So like the whole state of Rhode Island was doing things to promote food for the less fortunate, which is one of the beautiful things that unions can do as a community service, to be a part of the community and not just a worker. You know what I'm saying? To integrate us into um, our communities. I know as letter carriers, we are essential members of our communities, because you get to know people's routines and rituals, and then you know when something's off with that person, and you can really keep an eye out and make sure that they're safe. I know I mentioned in an earlier podcast about having a little old Jewish guy, and he would pick up his mail religiously. And the second he didn't pick up his mail, I knew something was wrong. He actually slipped and fell, and I ended up going out and visiting him in the hospital, because you build that bond and the camaraderie with your customers.
Yeah,
John, I
that's
believe
why, people like to say we're a special interest. We are not a special interest. We are integrated into the community. We're integrated into the economy. And like that story you just told, Josh, that's the work that really is about building labor solidarity across the community.
exactly. It's all about knowing that, we're all human, regardless of, size, skin color,
Mhm.
sexual orientation, all these things that, the ruling class goes to try to divide us as human beings, you know.
The other
Uh,
thing, the other thing that we should highlight, when I was in Massachusetts, I was with the Carpenters Local, and back in 2008, I was actually had a job site down in Providence, Rhode Island. Um, Providence Place, the big tower. I think it used to be the Westin Hotel at the time. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, now it's the Omni Hotel.
Okay.
okay, Omni.
Yeah, it was like one of the best job sites I've had. But one of the things that the AFL-CIO helps with is the building trades.
Mhm.
They have something called the PLAs, Project Labor Agreements, to make sure that the unionized workforce bids are not so high that they bid themselves out of the jobs, right? So the AFL helps connect employers, the unions, and legislators together to form a good bond to make sure that the cities, the towns that are getting built are actually strong union towns, and that the resources are collectively put back into the cities, because you don't want to hire people from outside your state to come in and work inside your state to take that money outside of the state. So that's one of the features that the AFL-CIO has, is that they build a community that you don't really see. So
Yeah, that's exactly right, John. 100%.
So one of John and I's friends, his name is John too, is really big on central labor councils. And can you explain what a central labor council is and why it is important?
Sure. So central labor councils, sometimes they're known as area labor federations, depending on the state that you're in. If you imagine that the state AFL-CIO is the union of unions for an entire state, a central labor council is for a certain geographic area. And it might be a specific city, it might be a county, it might be a region, depending on your state. But the idea is that, especially in some of the larger states, that, if imagine this is Pennsylvania, if you're working in Allentown, you might not be able to get to Pittsburgh on a regular basis. So how does the labor movement coordinate our activities across large geographic spaces? So we organize what is essentially these cell structures across different states, different regions, so that the people that are at the rank and file level or at the lower levels of union leadership can work in their particular areas, their communities, on issues that impact their members. Now, that might be political, or it might be, things that are impacting people in the community. It might be job-related problems. There might be a strike in some place where people need to get out and support the workers who are on strike. But the idea of a central labor council is to take the activity that is at the national, state, and then bring it right down to the local area.
Yeah, I mean I feel like that's very important, especially if the letter carriers are involved in those central labor councils, like our buddy John, who's very involved and understands. That's pretty much the way he explains it. Is we just got to be there for one another, and it's a way for us to realize that you know I have my problems and you may have your problems, but they're really not as different as they may seem. They may be different crafts, but we can
Right.
help each other with our whatever strife or dispute we're going through. We can find different resolutions that helped in different areas and different crafts.
It's that, and Josh, really what it is, and this is why the labor movement is so different than so many other movements in this country. The idea of solidarity is not a transactional relationship. It's not a question of, if you show up for me, I'll show up for you. The idea of solidarity is that your fight is my fight. And that when I'm showing up for you, it's because what's happening to you is happening to me. The idea of an injury to one is an injury to all is not just a slogan, it's the reality in our world. And the more that the labor movement can talk about it in that way and organize ourselves around that principle, the stronger we will be.
Yeah, I want to tie in one of my experiences with the Central Labor Council. I believe it was the Southeastern Central Labor Council of Massachusetts. The workers in Fall River,
Yep.
or New Bedford. I think it was Fall River. It's a big immigrant community, English second language, and the Central Labor Council were doing labor rights, and not just English speaking ones. They were speaking in, I believe, Portuguese,
Portuguese, yeah.
Spanish, and other languages. And it's like that's free, right? Like any worker could go and learn your rights of a worker. And this was 2015, 2014. I was at one of the meetings and they were talking about organizing. They're talking about how they were helping the non-union workers learn how to organize their workplace. And the Central Labor Council out there, they were talking about like organizing is like an onion, right? The first peel is not your core of supporters. And as you keep peeling away, you're going to get into the core. And that's who you eventually want to build towards organizing. And it's like, for someone that's not in a union, that's a huge learning lesson, right? To actually learn how to map out your workplace. And all it was these workers attended a Central Labor Council meeting on a weeknight once a month, and they got help. They didn't have to pay for anything. It was just the Central Labor Council was there for them. And then the Middlesex Central Labor Council, sorry, they keep referencing Massachusetts, but up in there in Lowell, I believe it was, they did a very good one. They did candidate nights, right? Like they had people come in that were running for city council and state councils come in and talk to the workers, right? And because it's, you got to build that rapport with the working class. So the Central Labor Council is and will be whatever the workers decide it should be.
Yeah.
And one labor council might not be the same as another labor council, but if you're a part of a labor union, you could help change that Central Labor Council in a way that you want to see change, because it's a democratic organization. And I think even the non-union workers that are listening to this should plug into their Central Labor Council, because say your boss is harassing you, your Central Labor Council could link up with church groups, faith groups, and other groups, and maybe do a march on the boss for you. If you're too shy and nervous of getting reprimanded, they could come out and stand with you and deliver a message to the employer. So,
yeah,
Speaking about
great way to say it.
And speaking about that, I mean, that's where I first bumped into Patrick Crowley. I had no idea who he was. I was kind of new to the state. I'm also a transplant from Massachusetts. And we were at the Fight Like Hell rally. And this guy comes up and he rips off this mega speech. And I literally looked over to someone and I said, "Who is that guy?" That guy that guy got me fired up. And if you followed me through different podcasts on Next Gen, I've been on the CCA corner. If you followed me through all the different things, I talk about John's podcast, talking about, impacting your local union. I talk about my EVP, who's now my president, giving up the speech, the James Henry rebuttal speech. And I don't talk about this one often, but this was the other one that really fired me up, was the Fight Like Hell speech that our man right here, Patrick Crowley, gave at that time. Speaking of that, this morning you were up at a line. What was it, at 3 a.m.? Were you there at 3 a.m.?
I was there at 3 a.m.
You are the man. Can you pop up that clip real quick, John? Throw the clip up. This is what I'm talking.
They think that we're going to be quiet. They think we're going to shut up and take it. And you're telling them today, hell no. We're going to fight. We're going to get what we deserve, and we're going to be here until we get it. So thanks for doing what you're doing. You're an inspiration to every single working class Rhode Islander. Thank you very much.
And man, just that takes me back. Hearing you talk that way is just the way it was at the steps of the State House in Rhode Island, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I've been on lines, I've been at rallies. I never really experienced a speech where it was just like, "Whoa, we are doing something here."
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Josh. I really appreciate that. But really, the passion comes from the belief in what we're doing. If I remember, one of the things I said at that Fight Like Hell rally is, workers like us have to understand no one's coming to save us. There is no savior on some white horse that's going to ride in before the end credits and save the day. We're going to have to do it ourselves. We can't let the bosses, we can't let the rich people, we can't let the politicians, no matter what party they are, think that they're going to save our day. It's up to us to make sure that our rights are protected. And that's going to take fights. It's going to take struggle, and it's going to take hardship sometimes. But if we stick together, if we have each other's back, we understand solidarity as your fight is my fight, we can do the things that we need to do.
So I kind of want to change a little bit of a gear for a second, because we talked about central labor councils and the local level and looking at things that way. Can we blow that up a little bit? Because you were just at the AFL-CIO Convention in Minneapolis, right?
Yep, I was.
So what would you say the purpose of that convention is?
So it's a convention that happens every 4 years. And it's we do there's some business that needs to get conducted. We elect our national leaders. So we re-elected Liz Shuler as president of the AFL-CIO and Fred Redmond as the secretary treasurer. But what it really is about, in addition to having working class leaders connect with their colleagues from around the country, it's about setting the policy agenda for what the labor movement is going to fight for the next 4 or 5 years. So a lot of the things that we talked about, first of all, it was in Minneapolis. So it was just incredibly inspiring to hear from our sisters and brothers and siblings from Minneapolis and talk about how they took on ICE and, had to engage in a general strike in order to kick those bastards out of the city, right? After they killed 2 union members. Let's not forget that the 2 people that were murdered by ICE, both of them were union members. That's not a coincidence. So it was great to hear from our siblings out in Minneapolis about how they fought back against that. But what we really talked about were things that we're facing now as working people and that we're going to face in the future. So there was a lot of discussion about AI and how AI is coming to take our jobs and how do we protect ourselves. But also, how do we be mindful of the fact that when we're building data centers for AI, that's a lot of good jobs. Most of it, in a lot of places, a lot of good union jobs. So how do we balance the needs of our brothers and sisters in the construction trades for job opportunities with the idea that we're going to make sure that AI technology is not going to come and steal the work that we're doing? So those are things that working class Americans need to struggle with. It can't just be the editorial page of the New York Times. It can't just be Fox News. It's got to be us. And we've got to insert ourselves in these conversations. And when you think about over over the course of my career, which is, I can't believe is like 30 something years now, I've seen the AFL-CIO go from being an anti-immigrant organization to a pro-immigrant organization where we're talking, we've got national union leaders like Jimmy Williams from the Painters Union actively talking about making sure that our brown and black sisters and brothers from foreign countries have a place in this country. And the difference in how that happens is that every 4 years when we get together, it's a chance to reset what the labor movement is going to talk about, to recalibrate our priorities. And what we did in Minneapolis this couple of weeks ago was just incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. I paid attention through different clips and stuff like that. One of the guys that I follow is the Proud Union guy. I don't know if you know who he is. He's making a big push through social media, and I think it's a big win for unions to have a guy that's dominating social media like he is.
Mm-hmm.
I was following through him. I was following through the AFL-CIO page. I follow a little bit through your page as well as the Rhode Island AFL-CIO page. And it seemed like there was a lot going on, and there's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
I actually was following through one of our branches page. I think it was Branch 11, Chicago. She was a delegate, Elise, for us to that convention, and we just talked to her the other day, right, John?
Yeah, she was excited because she was Elise Foster out of NALC Branch 11 Chicago. She was saying that this was one of the first times where the AFL-CIO convention actually had sit down discussions, right? They had people upstage and talking about the experiences and stuff like that. And the convention's ever evolving. And that's what the big point was that she was trying to drive home is it's not just a couple of people in a basement smoking cigars, talking about breaking legs, right? Like we've evolved. As Patrick said, just a couple of decades ago, it was like the immigration issue, right? There was nothing happening. There was against immigration. Then in 2006, there was the nationwide day of action of a day without immigrants or a day without labor. And it was very mixed, right? There was some unions supported it, some didn't. But now here we are in 2026, and we have mostly all labor unions have jumped on board with defending immigrant rights because the belief now is labor rights are human rights and human rights are labor rights. And Patrick just mentioned IUPAT, the president there of the Painters Union. He's very vocal on defending immigrant rights, and that's coming from the building trades, right? Building trades have a history of being just a pro-white dude organization, but here they are smashing down the barriers and making it all equal for everyone. And I think that's one of the importance of having a convention, right? You hear union members say, "Oh, this is just a free vacation," or "These are just retirees," or suits and ties. And then you have the non-union stuff like, "Oh, that's a special interest group," right? But in the end, everyone that was at the AFL-CIO convention is a union member who came from an employer that put a paycheck in their pocket. So these are all workers converging in one centralized location from across the country. And they're creating a dialogue to advance the labor movement, right? Like our national politics might be going backwards, but labor's trying to go forward. And if you're a non-union worker listening to this, give us a chance, right? Like, I know it's hard to organize a union because most of the laws are stacked against you. I was trying to organize a grocery store union on Cape Cod in 2013, 2014 at Shaw's and Falmouth. And it failed because the bosses have the upper hand. But forever, the labor movement will be out there fighting for everyone. And that's what the convention was, right? You have to create dialogue on if you have two different opposing opinions, you have to become educated and meet in the middle and keep making progress. So
yeah, that's great. I mean, listen, I have a friend of mine who always used to tell me, they're never going to be able to actually kill the labor movement because it's an idea, it's not an institution. And work sucks, and working people know it. That's why there'll always be a labor movement. It might look different. It might not be what your grandfather did. It might not be what our grandchildren will do. There will always be a labor movement.
Yeah, I agree. And touching on John's point, I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about like immigrants and illegal immigrants and all this. And I turned around and I said, you can't be mad at a person that came to this country trying to better them and their family. You can be mad at the boss who tries to exploit and take advantage of that person who's just trying to get enough to get by and to send back home to their family. I said they exploit those people. Those people are trying to get by just like you and I. And I think that's one of the things we have to realize as a working community is like, no, we're all the same. We want to do what we need to do for 8 hours, which is work, and then we want to have our recreational time, which is 8 hours, and then we want to have our rest time, which is 8 hours. That's pretty much the labor movement.
Yeah, it really, it's that simple. It really is. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for what we will, right? That was the slogan back when the most radical idea in the United States was a 10-hour day, right? 6 days a week. That was considered radical 100 years ago. That's why, I mean, when I usually talk about the immigration stuff with, folks that bring it up to me, I said, listen, why is it okay for a rich man to move his money across a border at the press of a stroke on a keyboard, but a poor man moves his body across a border? It's a crime.
Yeah,
That's
I say that all.
That's the imbalance.
I say that all the time. I said capital has no borders. Why should workers have borders?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I guess for the listeners, you were at the convention for the AFL. I have yet to be at a convention for the AFL-CIO. What is one of your takeaways for a union member, and what is a takeaway for the non-union? If you have two different answers, that's okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess for the union member, the takeaway is we get so wrapped up in the world of our own workplaces and our own unions that when you go to a convention like that, you start to see what other unions are really like and experiencing. And it's different from like, I was hanging out with a bunch of steel workers from Pennsylvania. I mean, that's tough work. Even in 2026, that's hard, dangerous work. And these people took pride in what they were doing. Now, they were sitting next to a table with a bunch of nurses from, I think it was Iowa, maybe it was Indiana. I mean, talk about two very different workplaces, right? You got one in a coastal area, one in the middle part of the country. They were sitting together talking, sharing stories about their boss, about their coworkers, about what they're facing, about contract negotiations. And people, looking at it from the outside, people were starting to realize, oh, shit, there's not much difference between what we do. You got college educated RNs and guys that maybe the last time they were in high school was when they were 17 years old. And now they're in their 50s and working heavy machinery in a steel mill. The rest of this country tries to divide us along those lines. You go to a convention like that, you see there's no division. It's all work. We all have to earn a paycheck, like you said, John. Now, for a non-union worker, I think what you're going to see is that this isn't all Hollywood portrayals of union members or union leaders. This isn't guys showing up in Cadillacs and limousines and $2,000 Armani suits smoking cigars. This is a 32-year-old grad student from the University of Chicago who's trying to cobble together a living making, $17,000 a year as an adjunct professor. This is a pipe fitter from Iowa or Colorado who during the day is working out in the field, laying pipe or digging holes for sewers, and at night puts on a suit and tie so he can go testify at a local community meeting about getting a project labor agreement for his union. I mean, that's what the labor movement is. It's not these Hollywood stereotypes. It's not what the Wall Street Journal wants us to believe. It's just average, everyday people that, thanks to the labor movement, have got the opportunity to learn what this economy does to working people and how we fight back against it.
I think that's the funny thing too. Like, to go all the way back to when I first saw you live and met you, and I just said, if you weren't up there on that, you could walk into the crowd and you were just an everyday person. You were just like one of us. And I think that's right. That's the beauty of the labor movement, and that's the beauty of going to these, conventions or gatherings of just everyday workers. You get to see that their fight is my fight. It's all the same at the end of the day. And one of the things that we were talking about too is like the political attacks and stuff like that. We actually have a clip from you from the No Kings rally, and I really want you to give your take on this specific thing that you said about solidarity. John, can you throw that clip up real quick?
The only defense against tyranny is the only thing that's kept this country alive for as long as it has, and that's solidarity. That's us standing together. That's us locking arms in defiance of tyranny. But I gotta tell you folks, no one's coming to help us. There ain't no knight in shining armor that's gonna fly onto the scene and fix this problem for us. It's gonna take us, every single one of us here, all of us working together. Because us in the labor movement, we know that an injury to one is an injury to all.
That's it, man. Yo, fired up, dude. I get fired up every time he talks. I swear.
Yeah, if I could say so myself, I was a little bit on fire that day.
You seemed it. You seemed it.
Hey, but shouldn't everyone be on fire at this point? If you're working paycheck to paycheck and your news headline just came out that Elon Musk just became a trillionaire,
right?
Like, come on.
Come on. Right? Exactly. So.
And you can't labor your way to that wealth. You got to exploit labor to get to that wealth. I think that's the big issue that we have in this country, where we'll say, well, he can do that, and it's like, yeah, but at what cost?
At what cost? It's $1 billion. I think it's $1 billion. That's a number that most people, I can't even fathom that. Right? We could spend the next 500 years trying to count to $1 trillion and we wouldn't get there. And that's how much money this guy has. When people are living in the streets of Providence, when people are losing their homes and losing healthcare, don't talk to me about, trillionaires and billionaires. That's a choice that this economy has made, and we've got to tell an alternative story to that.
We do.
One of the things I know a lot of people are always saying, like, oh, the No Kings is a Democratic thing and Democratic Party thing, and the labor union shouldn't be involved with this. But I want to tie in class struggle, right? The bottom up class struggle, right? There's the working class and there's a ruling class. And the only democratic process that most workers have is through the ballot box. Mm-hmm. And a lot of states, some states are eroding these rights, but a lot of states have ballot questions, right? Ballot initiatives. Massachusetts just passed a billionaire's tax, and currently this year, California is going to do a billionaire's tax, I believe. And this is just one example of how we, as workers, fight back against the ruling class, right? They control the media, they control all avenues of our lives, but they still have yet to control our vote. And to get a ballot question on a state election, it takes resources, it takes money, it takes a network of people, and it takes community support. And one of the biggest things is the labor unions. The labor movement is there. They led the charge in Massachusetts. They're out there in California doing it as well. So when people say, oh, like, this is not our this is not our fight, right? Like we should be staying out of politics, but we're workers. Politics is all about us. In a stroke of a pen, all of our labor rights might be abolished. The AFL-CIO Convention just happened. Jacob Morrison from the Valley Labor Report podcast and radio show was there interviewing people. I completely forget what federal union president he was interviewing. And the question was, what do you say to members when they lose their collective bargaining rights? And the union president goes, you haven't lost your union. The union is the people. It's the members. The members and the workers decide what a labor union is. And if that union loses their collective bargaining, they could still go on the offense and fight back as a collective. So I think that's ties in with these No Kings things. The No Kings is a coalition, just like any other social movement. And the labor movement is integrated into our communities. So I just want to hear what Patrick has to say about the labor movement tying into the social movements.
Listen, there's no distinction. When people put up those distinctions, what they're trying to do is divide us. You know, I remember a conversation I had with my sister, Mary Barden, who is the executive director of the NEA in Rhode Island. I used to work with her. You know, then she became my boss before I became the AFL president. And I remember another union leader was saying, you know, we might want to avoid the social issues. And Mary's like, well, what do you mean? Well, you know, abortion, guns, those aren't really union issues. And she said, well, hold on a minute. It's my members that are getting gunned down in schools across the country. And if this was a warehouse and the forklift had a propane tank that was leaking carbon monoxide into the air, you'd be all pissed off about that. In fact, there's a federal law to stop that. It's called OSHA. So why can't I advocate to make sure that assault weapons are regulated? Because my members are being killed. My members are workers. That makes it a union issue. Let's talk about abortion. Most of my members at NEA are women. To them, it's a healthcare issue. If we were going to restrict your pharmacy benefits, you'd be up in arms. You'd be going out on strike. So how come my healthcare is less important than your healthcare? And this big guy was like, oh, shit, you know, you're right. I didn't think of it that way. And again, that's the power of the labor movement, where working class people can be frank with each other about that. But to your bigger point, we have to engage in the political process, because if we don't, they're going to do it to us. And, you know, in Rhode Island, we have a very proud, you know, tradition of being involved. You know, 20 years ago, people don't realize this. We were one bad election cycle from being Florida under Ron DeSantis. We had a right-wing religious zealot as our governor named Don Carcieri. This guy vetoed a bill. He was such a bastard. He vetoed a bill that would have allowed same-sex partners to visit each other when one of them was dying in a hospital. And I say that to people in 2026, and they don't realize that in 2006, if you weren't married to someone, you weren't allowed to visit them in the hospital. He got more popular after he did that. Now, 2026, 20 years later, we got a blue trifecta. We're passing all kinds of pro-labor laws. We're passing all kinds of social justice laws, because for 20 years, the labor movement said, enough. We're not going to be divided by people like that anymore. And we're going to find the ways to turn every issue into a workers' issue.
See, I feel like we can tie in our last interview a little bit here, John. We just got done. We just released a video, a podcast with a labor reporter down in Florida, and about what's going on there and how they have these union busting bills and all this. And one of the things that really came out of it is the fact that the industries or the companies are spending about 1.7 billion in union busting across America. Think about what that 1.7 billion could do for your workers.
Yeah.
And we had McKenna Schuler on. She's a a journalist for Orlando Weekly, and she follows labor. State of Florida does not have a Department of Labor because under Governor Jeb Bush, he abolished it. And I think a lot of people don't realize the importance of that, right? Like you need the Department of Labor to uphold minimum wage laws, right? Of state minimum wage, or else you have to go get a lawyer, or you have to go and try to do it through the federal minimum wage, which is a terrible poverty wage. But the thing is, it's like you have all these special interest groups, right? You have ALEC, you have the ABC, the American Building Council or Construction, or whatever. You have all these special interests, Koch brothers, always trying to pass laws to undermine the workers' rights. In 2011, you had the Wisconsin uprising, right? You had Scott Walker tied to Koch, right? Like he got caught talking about how he would write a blank check to, or the Koch brothers would write him a blank check just to pass the laws. That was 2011. And the same bill pretty much ended up down here in Florida just a couple of years ago in 2026. And that's what they're under right now. And the union density is dropping because you have to just do so much to have a union. And I think we're heading towards the closing of this. And I want to close out with the closing remark is a labor federation like the AFL-CIO is one of the only organizations that can compete against the multinational organizations like ALEC, Koch, ABC, and all the other alphabet organizations out there that are dumping billions a year into our lives to hurt us, not to improve it, but to hurt us. Right. So the AFL is out there fighting for us. It's one of the only democratic organizations that goes across all walks of lives to defend our living conditions. And yeah, I think that one of my takeaways is I'm glad that I actually met Patrick Crowley. Like we need more of you. Maybe you'll run for president because what we have now is the bar is very low, right? The bar for United States presidency is very low. So you got my vote. So anyone that's listening to this, get involved with your AFL-CIO because we need to revive labor. And this is one of the ways, right? There's many different ways. We all got to find different avenues. So I'm going to let Josh take it over.
No, I'm gonna ask Patrick what his final thoughts or takeaway or plugs are. What is your final thought?
I guess my final thought is, I mean, you don't need to have an official title to be a union organizer. You don't need to have some kind of blessing from a body to get involved in your union or in the labor movement itself. You know, 3 o'clock this morning, I was at a picket line at our international airport because the local, Unite Here local workers were out on strike. There were 5 or 6 other folks there that had nothing to do with Local 26 and were just rank and file members from their unions that heard about the strike and stopped on their way to work. That's what makes the labor movement strong. They did nothing but stand there and hold a sign and talk with their fellow workers who they'd never met before about why they're out on strike. That is what's going to save us. It's not going to be some policy white paper. It's not going to be, the next resolution. It's going to be working class people understanding that they stand up for each other. And we need to create a movement that encourages that imbues that sense of solidarity within all of our rank and file so that it's just not something that's expected. It's just the way we do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you got to look at each other. I know, especially for me on the workroom floor where I am, I try to look at everyone. I try to say hello to everyone. And it's even it was funny. People would be like, "Oh, you're such a kiss ass," because I even do it to the boss too. I'm nice to everyone. It doesn't matter. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. And I let someone else ruin my day. I'm not going to ruin anyone else's day. And that's the thing. The power of being positive, actually caring, and actually knowing what affects the people around you. It can change anyone's day. And it could change the way that we interact out on the street for letter carriers with our customers. And our customers are our community. in our community will have our back if you treat them with dignity and respect like we expect to be treated while we are on the workroom floor. And as always, my friends, together we are stronger.
And my job is to represent them. My personal political views don't matter in this scenario.